Hi, my name is Paul Wicks and I'm the Director of Research and Development at PatientsLikeMe. It's a great pleasure to be here at Doctors 2.0 in Paris in May. So PatientsLikeMe is an online community created in 2006 by a family affected by ALS or motor neuron disease, and they really wanted to try and share their experiences of what treatments worked, what treatments didn't, and which symptoms they could try and modulate. And the idea was if they were going through this trial and error process, well, there must be hundreds and thousands of other families going through this too. So if everybody was to share their information, could we create a database where a new patient diagnosed yesterday could come in and see and learn from the experience of all the patients that have been before them? So that was the mission, and we launched that in ALS, and we have up to about 10% of everybody in the United States with ALS at any given time. We then expanded out to other neurological conditions like MS and Parkinson's, and then more recently we've opened up the site to anyone with any condition can join. We have very strong communities in epilepsy, in organ transplants, and one of the ways we fund the site, we're a for-profit company, we don't have advertising or subscriptions for patients, but we do research with the healthcare industry to try and say, well look, if you listen to patients and you understand their patient journey more, it might help you make better services, better products that you can offer. My role is really to try and build up the research base, to say that it's medically valid to collect data from patients, that we can compare it to data from other sources like insurance claims databases, we can compare it to clinical trial results, we can compare it to registries. And the second aspect that I would really like to do more work in is proving that we can improve patient outcomes. So not just making them feel better or making them feel less isolated, though that is very important, but can we actually improve outcomes like reducing hospital admissions or helping people recover faster from surgery. And I think that really is the most powerful opportunity to say the healing power of other patients to work with one another to improve their outcomes. So to someone who was just diagnosed with a serious illness, what I would recommend is once you've been through the process of diagnosis and made sure you've got all the information from your doctor, is to try and use the communities that exist out there, like PatientsLikeMe or other places, to try and find a couple of experienced mentors that can really guide you through. You want people that have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and they can hopefully work with you to say, you know, what were the decision points that they had in their process, and connect you with other trusted resources, because I think what comes up when you type a disease into Google can be very variable. You know, that is to do with things like how long the website's been around or how many links they have coming into them. That's not necessarily the best information for you. That might be good information that describes a condition, but the crucial thing is now, well, what would a patient like me need to know or want to know? And that's not to say that this is replacing what a doctor can tell you. A doctor is an absolute expert in the disease, but the patients are experts at living with and managing the disease, so that they're quite separate domains. So I've recently returned to the UK after having lived in America for 3 years, and what was really eye-opening about that experience is the difference in attitudes towards privacy and sharing. I think Americans naturally are a little bit happier to talk about themselves, and particularly medical problems, medical conditions. The way their healthcare is set up, when they have to pay for it out of their own pocket, it's a little bit more consumerist, so people are more willing to shop around and see where they can get better value. I think the European tradition, where we've had a socialized healthcare system, is to a greater extent to take what you're given, and that, you know, you can complain and grumble about the queues, but essentially you kind of go along with what your doctor says. And the idea of shopping around is quite new and alien. So I think we're seeing more of a transition to that in the UK. I think the openness of data that this government is actually promoting, they're promoting more transparency, they're freeing up data sets about how GP surgeries are doing, for instance. That's really going to lead an awful lot of people to be able to analyze that data, produce apps and things like that. So I think in the UK what we'll see is people taking advantage of that information to make better decisions locally. And my other hope is that we can see that openness translate into their records. So if people are willing to de-identify and donate their data anonymously, in the same way that we donate blood or we donate an organ, then I really hope that that can accelerate research, that we can use the passive data that exists out there in these silos and connect it all up to learn more about who has these diseases, what treatments seem to be making them better, what drug safety signals can we detect. And I think that the challenge is the data's all out there and we just have to pull it together in one place. So the e-patient movement is really a global movement, and we've seen it really take off in the last few years. I think people like e-patient Dave have been an inspiration, and he's really put the message across that anyone can do this. You have a voice. The internet allows you through things like YouTube and Twitter to really have your own voice, stake out your position. So we are seeing more people in the UK, particularly younger people or people with more chronic health term conditions, really get on board and start becoming more e-patients. I think the challenge though is to actually get the healthcare system to listen to that. We are seeing increasingly systems like Patient Opinion, NHS Unlocked, where patients can submit their feedback about hospitals or providers, and the hospitals themselves are actually reading that information and saying, oh gosh, I'm sorry, if this ward was dirty, we'll try and see what we can do to rectify that, and here's a report. So we are seeing that the internet can close that loop, and what the internet does is it lowers the barriers to being an e-patient. Whereas 20 years ago you had to go to a lot of meetings or travel down to London or be very articulate or very confident. Now you can just click a small anonymous survey and have your voice heard by the director of a hospital or something like that. And that has never existed at any time before in history. So it's a really transformative time. So I think in the UK we are beginning to see more organisations formed by patients and for patients. So for example, Parkinson's Movement was recently formed in the UK, and it is a global organisation but based there. And really the principle is that patients themselves are dissatisfied with the status quo. They don't just want information leaflets and tea and cake raffle sales for fundraising. They want to actually influence things. They want to try and engage with industry. They want to engage with regulators, and they want to do it with their own voice. Not someone speaking on their behalf who may be a paid professional, but to really so that they can get more educated and equipped to speak on their own behalf. And I do think that that's possibly a new vocation, that we could say, well, if you are an expert e-patient, then you can teach not just other patients, but you can teach the healthcare system how to be better for you. And I think that's a really positive way that we can help people who've otherwise been made to feel like they're not that useful to society anymore. If they've had to stop working or take disability benefits or something like that, they now have a really important role. So I think in the United States we do see some of this. There are certainly advocate programs, and sometimes they're put together by hospitals or by drug manufacturers sometimes. I think we're just starting to see the beginning of it in the UK as people are looking at what the traditional charities used to provide and seeing that the internet now provides a lot of that, information about a disease or how to find someone to diagnose you. So I think we're going to increasingly see that patients themselves are taking on more of that role and trying to find a place where they fit in the larger health ecosystem. I think it's not enough just to talk about how many empty bed days you had or waiting lists. I really feel like the population health, as measured by their quality of life, their symptom burden, by their adverse events, by the way they can get to work or not, that's the way we need to really measure how effective care has been. And when we can bring that patient voice into that, I suspect we're going to do a better job across the board. I also suspect we're going to make being a healthcare professional more worthwhile. I think we've over-targetized everything, we've over-checklisted and processed. And actually, if you try and consider the holistic view of the patient and use technology to make that easier and more concise, then I think we can carve out more time to spend on the important stuff, on the education aspects, on the interactions between a patient and a healthcare professional. So that would be my hope, that the technology becomes invisible. The technology is just something that lowers the activation thresholds, but lets us do the things that we got into healthcare to do. So my project right now is to try and find ways in which patients like me can really integrate into a healthcare system. Can we work out the privacy and the informed consent rules to ethically integrate the data which a hospital record has about you, or that your primary care record has about you, and use that to help you fill out your profile on Patients Like Me? Doing things like entering in treatments when you started and stopped is really difficult. There's lots of treatments and people don't have the right records, and it seems like, again, if that data's out there, we should just be able to integrate it. You wouldn't log onto your online bank and expect to have to enter in every time you took cash out of a machine. They should know, because it's a system. And so we're really looking at ways to try and do that. It's obviously very complicated. There's a lot of IT legislation and regulatory stuff around that, but we think that it's a battle worth waging, because ultimately if you can do that, you can take the objective data, the labs, the treatments, the prescriptions, the diagnoses from a doctor. You can take the patient-reported data, the symptoms, the quality of life, the work function, and you can overlay them so that each person contributes the data that they're best at providing.